This is the new Weight Watchers. It works for members like Jojo, who's learning simple, healthy habits, Sharia, who's making progress with meds, and Kim, who still gets to eat what she loves. For over 60 years, we've helped millions of members find what works for them. Now, it's your turn. Watch your life open up. Watch your story shift. Watch what you're capable of. Watch it work. Get started today at WeightWatchers.com.
A Swift Kickin' Ass, episode 40.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass. Living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren, and today we're going to bring it with podcaster and entrepreneur YL Savitskiy. John?
Yeah, today I'd like to welcome YL to the show, and before we get into the interview, just talk a little bit about YL, give you a little bit of background, and why we brought him to Swift Kick in the Ass. You know, I really think YL exemplifies what we're trying to do with our show. You know, life is full of swift kicks in the ass, and what that is it's really the honest truth, learning something about yourself that pushes you in the right direction and changes your life. YL comes to us today. He's a world traveler. He's a writer of the book Get College Right. He's also a fellow podcaster. His podcast is called Bring It, as well as he's a college student near graduation. So this guy has a lot of things going on. And on top of it, he's 6'5" tall. This guy is a freaking giant. So YL, welcome to the show. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Perhaps maybe what led you to become an entrepreneur, or what brought you to this path right here?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. That was a hell of an intro right there.
Absolutely.
Just saying, 6'5". Yeah, it definitely has its advantages. But so what led me to become an entrepreneur? I went to college not really knowing what I wanted to do. I had some ideas of what I was passionate about. And then I started really getting to personal development, learning new things, learning new concepts. And I decided that I had to do something with my passion rather than just learn and think about things. I had to take action and find a way to help other people as well. So that led me to this current business venture, and it's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, your business venture, and I know you have something in the works right now, but you also have a book out there called Get College Right. And from what I as I was reading about the book, and I went to college a long time ago, and as I was reading about the book, I wish I would have had something like this back when I went to school. So, what prompted you to write the book, and can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Absolutely. So at this point last year, I was thinking about graduating early, and I made the decision to do it. It would have been a little bit more classwork, would have been a little bit harder. And I kept hearing all these myths, all these things about college, and people coming in didn't really have a clue. I remembered myself being the first person in my immediate family to go to college. And like I just said, not having a clue, not really knowing what to expect, what would be out here. So I got here and I was a little bit stifled. I didn't know any of the norms, any of the culture here. I didn't really know what I wanted to do major-wise. I didn't know how to pick my classes, how to make friends. So it was a complete free-for-all. I was sort of, just fishing in the middle of the ocean, not knowing what I was fishing for. And that sort of prompted me to realize there's other people like that. I'm not the only one. There's people who haven't had the luxury of knowing what the college experience would be like, especially people coming from different sorts of families or different backgrounds than American. So in May, an interesting thing happened. I set out to write a couple of blog posts to help people who are going into college. And I did a couple of those, posted them in some Facebook groups, and the response was great. So I thought, you know what? Why not write an ebook? I'd always wanted to write. I enjoyed writing, and I decided to put together a piece of content that would help people doing everything from registering to classes to making friends to picking something that they'd be passionate about and making the most out of their college experience. It's too often that people go into college and they end up wasting a lot of time. They end up graduating late. they end up not maximizing all the opportunities. So I want to help people maximize those opportunities. And like you said, just get college right, making sure that they were doing the things that they wanted to do most in college and making sure they weren't stifled, and had a guide to doing some of the great things that are out here, like going to class, soaking in this knowledge, starting student organizations, networking, really developing themselves during their time at college versus just wasting away. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of students don't graduate. Unfortunately, a lot of people are unsuccessful in college. So I wanted to help more and more people succeed in college using sort of the proven blueprint that I used to get the results that I got during college.
So let me ask you, YL, if my daughter is 19 and she just started, she got a full ride to Nova Southeastern University, which is a primo school, but she's just started working as well, and she's taken a full load, plus she doesn't really know anyone. What kind of advice would you give her in order to, meet other people while she's carrying this big course load and working a part-time job?
So a couple of things there. The first one is, in these classes, most college classes that I've had, we have some sort of group work. So that's a great way to meet people. Get in groups with people who seem interesting, who seem motivated, and spend time not only studying, but it's an excuse to go out to dinner afterwards or socialize. And those people know other people too. So that's the great way to start socially. As far as working, she's got to make sure that the job is bringing her some value and not just a paycheck. I mean, unless she really has some big expenses that she has to cover, that's one thing. But she's got to do something where she's learning skills, developing herself. So it all depends on the job opportunity. And again, that's a way to meet people. As far as the coursework goes, honestly, the first semester is a semester to explore. That first year, a lot of exploration has to happen. So my best advice on that would be to do something called time blocking, where she spends certain hours in the day doing her classwork, but she doesn't let it preoccupy her life, because that won't give her the biggest return on investment. That'll give her some knowledge that might help her towards her major, but building that lifestyle, also, being healthy, that's a big thing. I'm sure her campus has a gym or some sort of, health organizations, getting involved in those. And another thing is volunteering. It's something I didn't know the value of until just recently, but man, not only are you giving back, but you're meeting the people, you're learning new things in the process, and it feels awesome. So those are a few things. And also one other thing, there's plenty of student organizations at most schools. Definitely utilize that. That's where you build a lot of those practical skills, from organizational management to event planning to really networking and making a difference. So those are all a couple of strategies she can use, and they're right at her fingertips. It's a matter of taking action and, like I said, just exploring what she would enjoy.
That's awesome, man. That's good advice.
You know what? I went to school many years ago. I don't even want to say how long, but I agree completely with you, because that was a lot of my experience. I needed to work. I worked my way through school, and like you said, you need it needs to add value to that experience. And I first started working in a hospital to really just earn money so I could support myself and pay my way through school. Little did I know the people I would meet, the tuition reimbursement benefit, which enabled me to get through undergrad with, no college loans, as well as work experience. When it came time to do an internship with my degree, I already had that all lined up, and I had the only paid internship in my class. So I relate exactly to what you're saying, and I'm really glad to hear that someone took the time to write that down and share that. In fact, as I was reading the write-up on your book, it said pretty much that when you were in the midst of this, kind of, you had a light bulb that went off, and it said, I'm not going to wait until I get out of college. I mean, I'm so far out of that college experience, there's no way I could do what you did. But maybe you could talk about that light bulb that went off and what got you writing.
Exactly. So to really understand that, I'm going to go into my college experience a little bit. And for everyone listening, I'm actually still in college. I've got 2 months left, and then I'll be graduated. So I'm graduating a semester early. So what happened when I first got here, like I said a little bit earlier, I didn't really know much, and I had to learn a lot through trial and error. So my first couple of years, I sort of got caught up into the mainstream college narrative of, just partying, not really making my time as meaningful as possible, not setting the right types of expectations for myself. So freshman year, I did well academically, but other than that, I didn't do much that was worth mentioning. I worked out a little bit, met some people, but again, there wasn't anything too significant. My sophomore year, I went in, I actually worked at a call center my second semester freshman year. I did well. We did some telemarketing, that sort of fundraising thing. And I worked there, and I decided instead of going back there working, getting some extra income, some pocket money, I would try to join a student organization. I would try to make more of a difference and expand myself more broadly. So what ended up happening was I went to a couple of interest meetings for student organizations, and I couldn't feel myself getting passionate about them. It was something that I knew I would just get involved in just to do, and I didn't want to do anything like that. And then an opportunity came along to actually start my own student organization, and it was a chapter of a fraternity here at Georgia Southern University where I go to school, the fraternity that had never been here. So that was something that I really put a lot of time in. I invested heavily recruiting people, building the infrastructure. I was the founding president. So that's something I worked hard on, and that's where I started to learn some of these higher mentalities, trying to get on that higher sort of consciousness and understanding things from, an empathy perspective, rapport, negotiation, all of those skills. And yes, there were a lot of struggles. There were definitely some times where I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But, not only did I learn so much, but the organization is still around today, and hopefully it'll be around for many more years and giving other students those same sort of opportunities. So that's really when the light bulb started going off. But even so, instead of, not doing anything, all my time was into going into the fraternity. That's all that took up my time. I still lacked that sort of balance. And that spring of my sophomore year, I really started having these thoughts of like, how much time am I wasting? I'm going out, I'm doing my thing on the weekends, but why am I really dreading my weeks? Something has got to change. So after that semester, there was a bonfire at one of the fraternity brothers' houses. And I said, guys, I'm about to really change. I'm about to turn things around. I'm about to get going on my purpose. And I've been missing sort of opportunities because I haven't been taking that action. So I gave myself a reason to have that swift kick in the ass, like you say. And then I really started, putting out more action. I started reading more personal development, more sorts of books, and applying different mindsets. I started meeting new people too. It was funny. I started thinking differently. I started meeting and attracting different sorts of people. And the more I spent time with those people, the further it stimulated me to keep improving, to keep growing. And then going into my junior year, I had a great first semester of junior year. I was a lot more grounded, a lot better socially. I was back working at the call center, but now, I was going towards a management position. So literally everything took off, and it created this momentum that's been building to this day. And then towards the end of junior year was when like I mentioned, I started writing the blog post. I saw a need for the book, a need for people to learn these skills. And I applied myself towards writing that ebook, which wasn't easy at times. I probably could have written it a lot faster than I did, but I literally, I would get writer's block, I would sit for an hour, put too much pressure on myself. And then again, I talked to a friend and he said, you've been writing this book, you've been thinking about doing this podcast. Why haven't you been doing it yet? And I told him, well, I've got this, and this going on. I don't have the time. And he told me, well, there's always time. You just got to prioritize. You just got to do the things that you need to do. And I really took that into account and finished my ebook earlier than I expected even. I'd given myself too much time, but earlier than I expected. And then that moved towards launching the podcast and sort of creating what I'm working on right now.
Do you find that if you have too much time, that it actually makes it harder in order to get motivated?
Definitely. I forget what it's called, but there's a concept where
Pareto principle.
Yeah, there you go.
80,
where your schedule works around what you have planned.
Right.
And it's really a fascinating concept. It almost sounds unbelievable, but it always holds true. I don't know if it does for you guys, but it certainly does for me.
Yeah, when I was in graduate school, we had a weekly deliverable that was basically a paper. We had to write a paper every week for this one class. And I forget how many pages it was, it was a certain amount of words. Man, those were so tough in the beginning, and you just struggled and struggled to get the thoughts down into words on the paper. But then over a period of time, it turned out that the less effort that I actually put into it, the better my grades. So, I was stressing myself out so bad trying to make everything perfect. But the fact is that when I kind of took my brain out of it and just let the thoughts flow, my grades improved. And man, at the end, I mean, you're just cranking it out. It wasn't any big deal at all. It just trained you. But I really your friend who kind of gave you that swift kick in the ass. You know, he said, "Hey, you know what? You've been talking about this. Why aren't you doing it?" To me, that
is a swift kick in the ass. I don't know what happened to John. He kind of froze up. But YL, I had downloaded your lead magnet, your from dreamer to doer. And what would be like the first step, according to that lead magnet, that you would advise a young person to do if they want to change or they want to get moving?
Well, you've got to define what you want to do. You've got to look within yourself and really do some of that digging and make sure that you're doing something significant that's on your purpose. Otherwise, you're not going to do it as well as you can. If you're not on your purpose, there's no way you can become world class if that falls outside of your purpose. And the way to do that, it can take a lot of time, it can take a lot of energy, but it's just introspection. You've got to look into your past. You've got to look at what you enjoy doing, what some of your goals are, and then you ask yourself why those goals are significant. And once you do that, then everything opens up. You can start leveraging momentum and taking those steps where you begin learning and taking action. If you synchronize those, you'll be well on your way.
You know, YL, what we did not mention is that you were born in Lithuania and that you emigrated to the United States with your parents when you were a young boy. So, and you did note it, you did note that you were the first person in your family to go to college. So, with that being said, was there pressure for you to go into college, to follow this path, or how did that work in the family, or was it just expected that that you work or do without the education? How was education presented in your family?
It was definitely an expectation. So a little bit of background. My parents, they grew up in the Soviet Union. Education worked differently over there. They didn't have college, but they had this post-high school education you could go into and pick sort of a trade. So my dad, he ended up working in the culinary field, becoming a cook, and my mom ended up becoming a nurse and then getting her license in the U.S. So they did have an emphasis on education. It was always expected that I go to college, but then the expectation was that I get a job, and I live, the mainstream narrative of getting a job, settling down, going to work every day, 9 to 5. That was the sort of expectation. But through learning, through doing things differently, through taking action, I've been able to get myself outside of that. And I've always sort of had bigger aspirations. I've always identified with different things. It's kind of strange, but from an early age, I never expected to live that lifestyle. And then late into high school, well, we'll backtrack a little bit. In high school, I got a swift kick in the ass as well because I struggled my first couple of years. My GPA was well below 3. We have something called the Hope Scholarship in Georgia, which if you have a 3.0 or above, your tuition is paid for. GPA was well below 3. Wasn't a really happy guy. Didn't have too much going for me. And then I was very fortunate. My cousin, who's 5 years older than me at the time, he moved in to live with us for a year. He was going through some struggles himself. So my parents said, yeah, sure, you can stay with us. And that was really a great influence. This guy, he was always working hard. He always had a lot of drive going. And he would push me to study. He would push me to start learning new things. He would take me to Starbucks, and we would sit down. And, I would say, I don't want to study. I don't care about this stuff. And he would give me the book, and he'd show me strategies. Also, he got me going to the gym. That was something that I had a limiting belief on. I never thought I'd be working out. I just imagined myself as this tall, skinny kid who didn't really have the coordination to be successful in the gym. But he took me, he pushed me. Sometimes he'd yell at me. And that initial period, I struggled a little bit. And then when he started moving out, when he was spending less time, I started encouraging myself to go to the gym. And then I saw results. And ever since then, I've been working out consistently. So that was also a key thing to changing sort of my brain chemistry and my aspirations and purpose.
Absolutely. The value of working out is really, really great. Besides the health benefits and, obvious that you get from working out, it teaches you how to progress, because sometimes it doesn't always work, right? Sometimes you're lifting, you're trying to lift a certain weight, and you're just stuck. You hit a roadblock and you can't get past it. So it teaches you how to get around roadblocks. It teaches you how to set up a structure and a routine. And I think that same drive and knowledge that you learn from working out, you can apply to regular life, right? Because it's something that you have to learn to structure at it. And me and John learned at a very young age. We started working out when we were 14, and I know it's still with me. We're almost 50 today, and we still train, and it keeps us healthy and young.
Talking about that drive, I mean, I think it teaches you to keep driving yourself forward no matter what. I mean, it gives you self-confidence because you know that you know that you've done it before in the gym when you've hit that plateau, or you're trying to meet that goal, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of dedication and drive to get there. But once you get there, it teaches you that you could do it. I just witnessed that with my daughter. My oldest daughter's 13 years old, and she's a dancer. And I forget exactly what she was trying to do, some type of backflip or something crazy. And she's been working at it for months and months. And when I picked her up from dance, she was so excited because she actually did it. And she was just like uncontrollably just happy about it. And I'm glad to see that, she has that drive too, because I think it can carry you through the thick and thin of life. I mean, life's not all good and bad. Life's not all good. It's a combination of good and bad. So you need that to persevere.
Okay, YL, what about entrepreneurship? And, I know that you're taking this up. First of all, how do your parents think about it? Are they happy that you're doing that, or they kind of question, going, I don't know, it's not secure, To
be honest, they don't really understand it, but when I speak about it with conviction and purpose, they sort of buy in. So they've never been entrepreneurs per se. They don't understand the mentalities that go behind it. When they think of business, they think of something like a grocery store, something simple, real small. That's their idea of business. And, they're 40s, they sort of in their comfort zone. There's just nothing wrong with that. They've done a lot. They've been through a lot moving to the U.S., but it's a foreign word to them. And then once I'm graduating college, I plan on moving to Las Vegas out of all places and being an entrepreneur there. So that too, going from Georgia to Vegas, that's pretty foreign as well. Not everybody does that. And, they probably think I'm a little bit crazy for wanting to do that. And maybe I am a little bit crazy, but there's nothing wrong with being a little bit crazy.
Definitely not.
Now, is there a certain area or that you're targeting that you're looking to work in?
So this business that I'm working on right now is about helping people between the ages of 18 and 25 apply entrepreneurial mindsets towards pursuing their passions, whether that be entrepreneurship or not, just anything that they're passionate about, making that an integral part of their life. Because I don't think many people do that at all. Most people do not do that. Most people get weighed into, the social pressures of having to settle for a job and all sorts of irrelevant things in the back. If you look back on it in 10, 20 years, those things become irrelevant. And when you're spending your time caught up on those irrelevant things, you just get unhappy. So it's not a good recipe for success. It's not a good recipe for happiness. And my goal is to empower more people and get the word out there that, hey, that's not the way it has to be. You have something you're passionate about. We live in a world where there's so many resources and more opportunities than ever before. There are no excuses not to bring it, not to learn, not to at least, take that action. And even if you fail, it's going to open up new doors. There's always new opportunities that open up. And so my goal with that in Vegas is to go from the podcast and go from online to doing live events, to doing speaking, to doing other interactive things.
Absolutely. The podcast does open up such great, it first of all, it builds your authority. People start listening to you. They start to know, like, and trust you. And it gets you into a whole new community where you get to meet other people, and it opens doors for you. Have you found? I've noticed. I've listened to your podcast, and I've noticed that right away you do an interview based podcast. How do you get your guest? Do you just email them, or do you reach out to them? Tell me your secret.
It's a really good question. So what I did initially was I looked at people who would potentially make good guests, and I would send them an email. I had kind of a template that I would adjust, but I would send it to them, help them understand what the show is about, and basically coming at it from a very humble perspective, saying, look, I'm this young guy, I have this podcast, this is the purpose. I'd be happy to connect. I'd be happy to help tell your story. And that really set off that initial momentum. The first time I got a yes from somebody other than a friend, it was a lady named Sarah Centrella, and shout out to her. She wrote a book called Hustle, Believe, Receive, which is coming out in January. So that has a lot of these sort of stories where people really took action, got what they wanted. But anyway, she was the first sort of real guest that I had on the show, and I was shocked. This was during the 2 weeks between summer semester and regular semester, and I was literally building this podcast from my bedroom at my parents' house. So I would do these interviews. I'd be sitting, in my bedroom on my laptop doing these interviews and trying to sort of fake it till I make it. Like I knew what I was doing with interviewing. Like I knew what I was doing with content. And it ended up going well at first. And over time, I've been able to do better with building content, to do better with, attracting guests and production-wise, but also to reaching more people as well. And from there, a lot of the guests I've had, I'm sure to ask them how I can help them out, what I can do for them in their business, and also see if they know anybody. A lot of them know people who would also make great guests. So it creates sort of a domino effect.
What kind of challenges did that, when you first started, was it overwhelming with all the equipment, or did you just go simple and plug in a USB mic?
Well, absolutely. It was just learning. Honestly, one of my biggest weaknesses is the whole software aspect of it. I'm not very good with computers. I'm not very good with software. So having to spend hours doing that was overwhelming. At times, I doubted myself for doing it. But sure enough, it got easy. Like, as you know, with software, once you figure it out and you know the process, it gets pretty easy. So having to use things like Libsyn, Lead Pages, WordPress, those things were the initial challenge. And then finding a format for show notes, listening to other shows, seeing what other podcasters did, seeing what type of direction I wanted to take the show. And at first, my first couple episodes, I would have my guests tell me their background and they would ramble on for 10 minutes. So I had to make it clear that the background part was, about a minute, and the way I did introductions changed as well, the way that I closed the show, and types of questions too. At first, I would send them a bunch of topics and have these preset questions, and it wasn't as interactive as an interview as it could have been. They're giving me content on a certain thing, and instead of expounding upon that or, letting my curiosity pave the way for the next questions, well, I would just read the next question. And
right.
The guests, most of them, fortunately, were good speakers, so that went well. But looking back, those were a couple of the mistakes. And then getting it going, announcing it to the world, that was tough as well. I didn't know what kind of reaction I would get. But besides that, it was also grueling hours at first. I would spend, this was my 2 weeks between summer semester and this semester, and I would spend my days messaging people, writing show notes, just working on the podcast nonstop. But I needed that. If I hadn't done that, it would have been nearly impossible. I would have had to not sleep at all to do the same sort of effort while I was taking classes and doing all these other things. So that was sort of the launch period. And that's when I handled a lot of that initial adversity. Ever since, I've just grown so much. It's been amazing. I was looking at it the other day, how far these episodes have come, how many people I've been able to reach, and it's only growing. So that initial period of adversity, and you can apply that to anything else. Just getting started is often the hardest part, but once you get started, you figure out ways. Like I said, there's so many resources. It's almost hard not to. If you're willing, if you're determined, you will get there.
It's amazing, YL. You're just wise beyond your years. I mean, you really are. You mentioned the conventional belief of going to college, getting married, having the house in the suburbs with 2.5 kids. You know what the statistics are, and a lot of people see that as the dream. And what you're really saying is, you're saying, hey, you know what? If that's not for you, there are other paths you can go, and you're leading by example.
I think it's really smart too, because John and I'm 48 and John's 49. He's a little bit older.
I'm not yet 49, but
oh, okay.
Next month.
But we're those guys that went to school and got the jobs. We didn't follow our dreams because there wasn't the information like we have now. I wish that I was a young guy now, just starting out. But what happens is we get trapped, and you get families, you get responsibilities, and it's not so easy to become an entrepreneur on the side, on the side. I mean, you can do it. And, John and I obviously are trying to make a stab at it, but we can't just put everything into it because I have a family, I have a house, I have a mortgage, but to be able to do that when you're young, when you don't have those as many responsibilities, you can live lean and really, put your 100% into it. I think it's a good idea. It's smart because I never want to look back on my life and say I regretted anything. And I think that's the same if you catch a young person before they get to a certain age and inspire them to try at least live out their dream. If you fail and you don't work, you can always get a job, but at least you could try.
Yeah, on that note, I did, like Tom said, I went to school just as much as he did. But throughout our lives, I mean, Tom and I have had people that really stood out and live by their own terms, is what we call it. And those are people that really, it's not about having money. It's about control and about living life as you choose and creating your own world and your own opportunities. And, I took a corporate route, so did Tom. But I don't consider us to be typical corporate employees. It serves a purpose for us. And, education is great. I have advanced degrees, but I'm not defined by that. That's not that doesn't make me a success. And I can see that in you as well, that it's important to have that education, but in many ways, today's education is not so much about learning how to learn, like you took away, but it's more like preparing you for a job. And, to see someone at your age have that mindset and going out there and staking your own claim, I applaud you. Good job.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And on the point of education, I want to say the way I look at it, it's a life, and what my guests on Bring It consistently say, it's a lifelong education. You can't stop learning. Once you stop learning, you're done. You're stagnant. So that's what I want to emphasize to anyone listening is your education goes beyond college. It goes beyond a formal sort of degree. You can read a book, go to a seminar, listen to podcasts like this, and continue to get educated, continue to grow, have those positive stimuli. And that's really the real value of education. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to go to college, but it's not for everybody. Some people have different sort of aspirations, and they can get a better education going out in the field and doing other things. So the whole concept of one size fits all, you have to go to college, is utterly wrong. And it makes a lot of people miserable. A lot of people go into college, they don't succeed, they end up dropping out. Their self-esteem is down in the basement. And yeah, it's tough to get out of that. So I would say if you're going to college, or if you have people who are going to college, loved ones, neighbors, just encourage them to go into college with a plan and not just go into it for the experience and because society's telling them they have to. It's not the definite route. Once you get a peek behind that curtain, like we're talking about, that there's other ways, that there's more significant things than just conforming to the social norms and becoming a corporate drone, which a lot of people in the corporate world are.
I agree.
Then you could begin this new route, and it's there. Like I said, it's available. There's so many resources.
Yeah,
absolutely, man. It's funny because I work in radio, and when I first got into radio, I got into it because I felt artistic. I wanted to be creative, and it was a great outlet. Radio back when I first got into it, I got in 1991. It was like that. It was still creative, but the corporations came in, bought up all the mom and pops radio stations, and instead where we would have two rock stations in our area that would be competitors, all of a sudden we're under the same roof and we're not allowed to step on each other's toes. And it took the soul of radio became corporate, and it kind of stole something from it. So here's something that I got into where I thought that I was following my passion, and ended up being, felt like I was trapped in a corporate environment. And it's something that it takes away your freedom. And, John and I both talk about, there's good sides of working for a corporation, but there's a lot of negative too.
Yeah. And understanding what that difference and understanding why you're doing whatever you're doing, that it all begins with that. And then if where you're at, you're not happy with, and you're not doing something about it, then that's on you. I mean, it's on nobody else. And that's really what I think we try to, tell our audience. We all, at this point today in your life, it's represents every other day previous, and every new day is an opportunity to learn something new and try something different. And sometimes you're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes, but that's okay, as long as you learn from them and you keep moving forward. I work for a corporate. I work a corporate job, but I've never been a corporate drone. I've always felt very, very much the atypical. I'd never been the company man. It served a purpose for me, but and it still does. I have a challenging position, and I work from home, and I have a lot of really good. I have great benefits and good salary, and it's challenging for me, but it doesn't fill me with passion. I'm not passionate about that, which got me into doing podcasting and blogging. So it's we all have a road to travel, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's seeing this in somebody so young and recognizing that path. There's no cookie cutter approach to living. I commend you. Good job.
Well, YL, if people are interested in finding you and finding your podcast, can you tell them where they can find you?
Sure. So I'll spell this out for you. It's sort of a hard spelling. So my website is ylsavitskiy.com, and that's the letter Y, the letter L, the letter S, the letter A, the letter V, the letter I, the letter T, the letter S, the letter K, the letter I, and the letter Y. And I'm sure you guys have some sort of show notes or can have some sort of link. I know it's sort of a hard spelling there. And everything you need pretty much is on the website. There's the blog and podcast. Podcast is also on iTunes. Just search for Bring It, and it'll be there. You can listen to those. New episodes come out every Monday through Thursday. I also have a new product that I want to mention really quickly. It's called the Bring It Blueprint. The point of that is to help anybody, not even just young people, go from dreamer to doer. Provides an outlet and a step-by-step way to do so. And it's also got some success myths about business that unfortunately too many people think are true. So it's full of that. Also have some quotes in there and a reading list from a serial entrepreneur. So some books on anyone who enjoys reading about business or personal development. That's something they would enjoy. So if you go to my website and you click Bring It Blueprint, it's a 100% free product. All you have to do is enter your email, and I'll send that right to you.
Sounds cool. Hey, did they call you Alphabet in school? Is your name? My wife's maiden name. My wife's maiden name was Krasanik. She was Polish, and she always people could when you see the spelling, you wouldn't think it even says Krasanik. It has K's, R's, A, W's, Z's, all kinds of letters in it. So the teachers would say alphabet. But thanks for being a guest on A Swift Kickin' Ass. If you want to check out aswiftkickingass.com, you can download our action guide for this episode and all our episodes. And I thank YL again for being a guest. And till next time, peace.
Yeah. Thank you all very much. And thank you very much, YL.